So here's the thing, homeowners, homebuyers, investors, we all want to find that perfect property to move into and to eventually sell for a profit. And we want to make that purchase in a place with affordable, safe, quality homes, communities, and businesses. Why? So we can actually enjoy our lives, take vacations, and spend the quality time we want with the people we love. How do we do all this without risking a fortune and running ourselves ragged? That's the big question, and this show is dedicated to the answer. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Vancouver Real Estate Today. I'm Josh Kepke with McDonald Realty, and today we're speaking with David Stroud of Mortgage Sandbox. At his core, David is a finance guy, and he believes that there is an argument to be made for making a fall purchase this year in 2019. With over 25 years of experience in the finance world, David really knows what he's talking about. He's been a mortgage broker for 5 years in the past as well, and now he's a tech CEO. Really excited to have him with us today. Also a Vancouver guy. Dave? Where are you from in Vancouver?
I grew up on the west side.
West Side boy.
Went to McGee and ended up at UBC.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And we're here because you believe there's an argument to be made for a fall purchase. And before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about Mortgage Sandbox, this tech startup that you're spearheading?
You bet. Yeah. So Mortgage Sandbox, what it is it's really looking to address an issue where if you look statistically, a lot of people start their search for a realtor or a mortgage broker online, but close to 2/3 of them end up just taking a referral from friends and family. But then at the end of the day, close to a third aren't really that happy with the experience. So the idea with Mortgage Sandbox is that it provides like an eHarmony for finding a realtor and mortgage broker. What you do is you answer 10 simple questions that address your values, where do you live now, where do you want to live, but it also brings in some elements of a complementary working style, and then it matches you with 3 options for a mortgage broker or a realtor who are best matched to you to work well with you, and you choose the one you want to work with. So these are pre-screened local realtors and mortgage brokers who are predisposed to work well with you. And that's the core concept, and it's pretty exciting.
This is a fantastic idea because so many homeowners and buyers I find end up with the wrong agent because it's somebody's sister or somebody who they've met who's part-time, or they've just seen signs in the neighborhood. So really good to take that extra step and qualify your agent.
Yeah, and it's important to find someone who can relate and understand your priorities.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's important to be on the same page. So let's get into the fall market predictions. David, you were talking about some of the charts and stats from the past month. We know that there's a handful of factors that impact the prices. What are you seeing?
Sure. Well, let's just go through what I call the 5 factors really driving the market, and then we'll look specifically at that part around the seasonal aspect of fall.
Fantastic.
Okay. So the 5 factors that I look at for the market are affordability, the capital flows, government intervention, and supply. So on the affordability front, I think everyone knows, even though prices have dropped in Vancouver, it's not that affordable, right? A 2-bedroom condo still is bumping up against $1 million. That's still a concern.
It's not a great word, affordability, right?
Yeah. So if you were to look at a very recent Royal Bank report that came up in Toronto and Vancouver, affordability for them is a risk factor. So that would say affordability, that factor is putting some downward pressure on prices.
Yeah.
Right? Capital flows, that's local investors or international investors. Generally, I think most people would agree that is definitely lower than what we saw in 2016. Again, putting downward pressure on prices. Government intervention comes in 2 ways. So sometimes they're helping out with supply, sometimes they're messing with demand, you might say. Again, I think they're trying to temper the market. They don't want prices to go down, but they don't want them to skyrocket again. So you're going to see some stability in that. And then finally, supply. There's plenty of supply at the moment. And earlier this year, there was in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, about 41,000 housing units under construction, which is at the high end of what we would see in like a 10-year historical scale. So some downward pressure on prices on the demand side, plenty of supply. The fifth item, and this is the key one, is sentiment. So how do people feel about the market? If you think back to last year, 2018, while prices were rip-roaring along, the fundamentals, if you actually looked at the charts, would have indicated to you that, yeah, you know what, prices are going to taper off soon. But buyer sentiment was very hot. People were very keen, and regardless of what the statistical models might tell you, they were in.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the wild card in a market is, people can point to all the economics they want in the world, but if someone wants to buy a house, they're going to buy a house.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with economics. Well, we have this population here. There's an assumption that they all have houses, but they don't. A lot are underhoused.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people living in vans in Kerrisdale.
Yeah.
So you got people parking vans in alleys in Kerrisdale or at Home Depot and living in a van, and you all have a lot of people packing into basement suites that, for their income level, really have no business being packed into a basement suite. And so what I call that is unmet demand. Like these people in a normal market, if there was a supply, would be in a proper home, but they're not in these current conditions.
It's crowding, right? That's
Yeah.
what we do when we can't build the supply. And then there's at least one other time in our history in Vancouver where we did that, and that's back in the sort of late 1920s, where you wouldn't believe it, the density in the West End. Obviously, it's not what it is now because there's no high rises at that time. But they built something like they quadrupled the amount of housing stock in that neighborhood in a short period after, but did not even double the population, so they just uncrowded. So I think that's kind of what you're speaking to.
You're gonna have to send me a link to that one. I've never heard that.
So let's get into it then. Why should I buy a house or a condo in the fall market, and what should I buy? Should it be a house or a condo?
Well, okay, let's tackle these one by one. But what I do want to do is first look at year-over-year purchases.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at the chart, you can see that if we go back to 2017. It's the higher end. 2016 was even higher, but 2017 last year was lower, and this year is even lower. So the number of homes purchased in a given month, and you'll see, right, the curves. It's like if you have a puddle and it's shrinking, and you can see the lines, the watermarks, right? So it's just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Now, what you see on the chart is that. Obviously, the early year, so January, is quite quiet. Not a lot of people buying, and as well at the tail end in November, December, not a lot of people buying either. So it's pretty consistent, seasonal. Usually, the peak months are May, June. So if someone tells you the market's hot in May, June, that's like okay. So it is every year, but how is it compared to previous years is what you really want to ask. And frankly, at the moment, it's this year is slower than most previous years. You could go back, I think, over a decade, and you'll struggle to find a period that's been this slow. Mm-hmm. So, as a buyer, that's not a bad thing. If no one else is buying and you are, that means you have a lot of choice.
Yeah.
What it also means is that you think about, we were talking about the priorities that you want your realtor to understand. You have your list of requirements that you want in a home. Mm. When you're bumping into a bidding war, you don't get to go over that list of priorities, right? You're just happy to find a place. In this kind of market, you can actually look for a place that is a tighter fit or a better fit to what you actually want. And I think that's a huge advantage.
You can be more picky right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you're not competing against as many other people. Now, if we go to the supply chart, now this is where it gets a bit interesting in the Vancouver market. If you were to look at Ottawa, the supply chart pretty much mirrors the purchases chart. it's that watermark, right? A little bit hotter in the summer months, spring, later spring, summer. Pretty slow in the shoulder season, and usually supply is more than what actually gets bought, because that's normal. That would be Ottawa. In Vancouver, interestingly, you look at 2017, it's pretty flat across the board. Very low supply. There is barely anything for sale. I'm talking about condos specifically.
Okay.
And then in 2018, it started doing that sort of seasonal thing, or at least it looked like it was. So the number of condos for sale rose a fair bit right into the summer, but then it didn't do the drop off. It didn't do the tail. So what ended up happening is there were a tremendous number of condos for sale last fall, and prices dropped. Right, because again, the purchases tail off in the fall, and so this year, and this is tough. You need to sort of hold back. You don't want to just go fall in love with the first place you see. Right, you're in a situation in the fall, potentially where there's a lot of options, and you have the potential to find something that matches almost everything. You can never find something that's a 100% match, but like 90% of the things on your wish list, you could get.
I say
85. So don't walk into the first one that's got a great setup and fall in love with it, and it only has 80% of what you had on your list. Because that's easy to do, right? You walk in, it's very well staged, has a beautiful view from the window, and you say, "That's it, I want it." In this kind of market, if you're patient, you may find something that's even better. Now, that doesn't mean you go into sort of an analysis paralysis and be looking at places forever.
Thank you.
But probably spending a month looking at a few places, and just make sure that your realtor is only showing you places that are close to what your wish list is, and maybe keep it realistic, right? Sometimes you don't find everything next to each other. So if you're right beside a school, it's very unlikely that there's a supermarket right next door too, right? These generally tend to be a bit further apart. But this is the time. I think get a feel for what is out there, what is the quality of the product that's available, the homes that are available, before you actually start looking in earnest. And that's the period in time when you got to get your pre-approval on your mortgage, because you have to have an idea of really what your budget is before you bother looking, frankly. And then the only other caution I would say is a pre-approval for a mortgage is a pre-approval of you as a person, as an individual. It's not a pre-approval of the property, because you haven't even picked one yet. And so when it actually comes time to make an offer, always make it subject to financing, and particularly in the current market conditions, you can do that.
Absolutely.
Because a lender may look at the strata minutes and decide, you know what, this is a high-risk building and I'm not comfortable with it. That can happen. Also, in a market where prices are dropping, there is a risk that the lender that appraisal may come in lower than what your sticker price is. And they're only going to give you a percentage of what they value it at, not what you decided to pay it for. So there's some things you got to keep an eye on there, but obviously you want to get a pre-approval before you spend too much time with your realtor looking at places that aren't in the ballpark.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to go take you looking at places without the pre-approval. So let's do a quick recap here. We've got time. The fall market's on the horizon. I'm not sure exactly when this video is going to get published, likely in September, though we're in August now. So if it's September, you got a few weeks to go visit some open houses and get a feel for where the market's at, what you like, what you don't like, and maybe go over to Mortgage Sandbox and see if you can find a realtor that fits your, let's call it your disc profile or your interests, and has some shared values. And then really go get the pre-approval sorted out with the mortgage broker. Sorry, can we do mortgage brokers on Mortgage Sandbox too? You can match to the mortgage broker. Fantastic. So you can do that all on Mortgage Broker or Mortgage Sandbox. And then get out there, look at some places, and don't feel like it's just going to get better and better and better, because this is a great opportunity coming up in the fall. And as long as you're not trying to flip it within a month, a year, you're going to be living in it and holding it. Great time.
The only thing I would add is these charts that we're sharing. I update them. They're available. You can see the latest version will be on Mortgage Sandbox if you want to get an update in the fall.
Great. So you can go to Mortgage Sandbox for data. You can go to Vancouver Real Estate Today for data and information. So many options and resources out there for you. David, thank you so much for visiting with us today. Is there anything you else want to cover before we go?
No, I think we're great. That was great fun, and I think it's an exciting time in the market. I think for years it was pretty much the same news every month.
Yeah.
And now finally things are changing. So it's great to be with you, and thanks for having me.
And how can people reach you at Mortgage Sandbox?
MortgageSandbox.com. So you can do customer service at MortgageSandbox.com, or my name, David. So D Stroud at MortgageSandbox.com.
Thanks so much. We'll have some links there in the show notes, and I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Fantastic.
Bye for now.
Good job, guys. I learned a lot.
Okay, we're gonna edit
It did paint a bit of a rosy picture.
Oh yeah, no, but then I saw a written report that they released to the public, and I was like, well, this is kind of rosy.
Yeah.
But like one-on-one, he's no, mind you, maybe he was a little bit fresh at the time, so he's.
Vancouver Real Estate Today explores the art of living through genuine storytelling and localized expertise. If you enjoy what we do here, do us a favor and write us a review, and visit us at vancouverrealestatetoday.ca and discover the home that lets you express and live who you are.